Act 1, 30 pages. 60 pages, Act 2. Act 3. We start in the ordinary world here. We go to the special world of Act 2. And then we are back in the ordinary world for Act 3. But we're changed. Your lead character has to go through a change. He's gone from one state of being to the next. Now, in the Act 2, which I could do a whole 2 weeks on here, you'll see that these are plot points. Okay? So we start in Act 1 in the ordinary world. This first line here is the Act 1 plot point. This is where we leave Act 1 and we go into the special world of Act 2, where we're going to do what? We're going to explore and try to solve the conflict. This is where the conflict takes place. This is the setup for the conflict in Act 1. This is the exploration of the conflict in Act 2. And this is the solution to the conflict in Act 3. Everything is in threes. Beginning, middle, end, setup, conflict, resolution. Can everybody see that? Setup, conflict, resolution. Now, these 4 points, you usually have 4 major hurdles of conflict in the second act. Okay, and these are plot points. So we see in the second act of the hero's journey, let me make this a little more visible for you. After we cross the first threshold, you see number 6, tests, allies, and enemies. So in order to make Act 2 work and make the movie balanced out structurally, what should we know before we write our screenplay? What should we explore when we're writing out the story for the first time? All the way through the process, you need to think about how this is going to relate to cinematic structure. Obviously, before you start anything, you have to write your story out all the way. But even at that stage, if you think cinematically, cinematic structure all the way, even as you're writing your story out in free verse form the first time, that is where you attack Act 2. That's where you're going to work it out. So if we're dealing with the meeting of allies and enemies, and if we're dealing with tests, okay, that gives us fodder right there. In order to have allies, we have to do what? We have to meet them first. The audience has to meet them. In order to have enemies, we have to meet them too. So what are these? These are opportunities for you to write scenes. And then once we meet these characters, then we go through the exploration process of how are we going to solve the conflict. Well, the way that you solve conflict is by surviving and besting these tests. Okay? So now, we just talked about negations. The act in the middle, okay, the second act is what? It's a series of negations. It's a series of setbacks. It's a series of challenges on the way to solving the main conflict. You can also have a series of thresholds in there where they're crossing from one state of being to the next as they move toward solving the problem that they're out to solve. Okay, we just saw a quick example in The Godfather where that scene took place right at the doorway. That's not an accident. I'm not saying you have to put a doorway every 5 minutes. It'd get kind of old after about 5 or 10 minutes. But be mindful when you watch a movie of threshold crossings. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be a doorway. Doesn't have to be a doorway. You can also write a threshold crossing when another character close to the main character, undergoes a change. There's a terrific Richard Gere movie called Unfaithful. Anybody here ever seen it? Oh boy, that thing is something. But we see some threshold crossings in that movie where the thresholds are metaphoric. So he's seeing subtle changes in his wife's routine and behavior. And again, it's along that principle of uninflected images. In and of themselves, they don't mean anything. And her explanations are, believable enough, but she's become a little distant, slowly and subtly over time. Her routine becomes changed slowly and subtly over time. So each time that he's coming in contact with this, he's in a place that is what? Unfamiliar. Any kind of plot point or any kind of plot change takes the story and moves it in a different direction. So now, when we get back to this, all scenes should push plot or reveal character. But it gets even more scientific, even though it's not a perfect science. When you're writing your beats, after you've finished writing your beat sheet, put it down, take a breath from it before you go on to the next stage. But, I worked for a guy who's a wonderful man. His name is David Foster. He produced a movie called The River Wild. He produced Mask of Zorro. And one of the things he imparted was this. Especially in the first act. If I had 30 of these, okay? These are beats. Or when you have a beat, you try to figure out, does it refer to plot or character? And you keep a cadence. So for example, if you're writing your beat sheet and you want your movie to keep moving in the mind of the audience, you want it to be exciting. So if you've got 10 beats in a row that deal with nothing but character, what's going to happen to the reader and the audience? Going to fall asleep on you. But if you can order your beats in this way, where you've got a beat that deals with plot, and then you cut to something that deals with character, cut to another scene that deals with plot, maybe the next scene deals with character, especially in Act 1. We just watched the clip from The Godfather where we had elements of this, because we've got the arrival of Johnny Fontaine, we've got him singing the song, we've got Michael sitting down to talk to Kay. That scene pertains mostly to character, because we're learning about what? The characters in the family. We cut back to Johnny Fontaine going up to the office with Don Corleone and telling him about, I wish I could get this part in the movie, but I can't, I don't know what to do, and he gets smacked around. That deals with plot. Okay, but if you can order your beats in such a sequence that you're addressing plot in certain beats and then addressing character in an order, in a rhythm, it will keep your audience on board. So plot, character, plot, character, plot, character, to the degree that you can make that happen. Okay?